In the silent depths of the ocean, a monster is sealed. It spreads its wings behind its back, and emits a long howl from its mouth. It extends its sharp claws towards the insignificant beings that awakened it. However, due to the restraints on its body, the people who managed to escape are unaware that death will soon be upon them. A few days ago, Professor Peterson, a biologist, received an invitation from Pickman Corporation. Julia, a company executive, revealed that their company had discovered a new form of life in the depths of the Antarctic Ocean, at a depth of 10,000 meters, and wanted to invite Peterson to investigate. But Peterson was not interested, because it was his father's hobby. Peterson had doubts about the accuracy of the information. He believed that human submarines could not reach the depths of 10,000 meters, and Peterson didn't want to waste time on such matters. Unable to capture Peterson's interest with the discovery of the new species, Julia took the opportunity to mention Peterson's father, Walton. It turns out that Peterson's father was an ancient civilization researcher. This time, the discovery in the depths of the Antarctic Ocean is related to his father's project. In addition to the new species, they also discovered a peculiar ancient relic. However, for unknown reasons, his father's team had an accident during their expedition in Antarctica, and the entire team went missing. As a result, the project was put on hold. Then, Julia took out a device that displayed the trench map of the Antarctic continent, and showed a mysterious underwater relic photo. Upon seeing the relic in the photo, Peterson became somewhat excited. In order to find out the reason behind his father's disappearance, he agreed to the invitation. Furthermore, Julia introduced 4 individuals to him: the team leader, Hank; submarine pilot, Gordon; marine biologist, Harris; and diver, Joseph, to study the underwater relic. Pickman Corporation spared no expense. They spent a total of 2.5 years constructing a deep-sea submarine. This submarine utilized the latest scientific technology and was made entirely of new composite materials. It could dive to a depth of 15,000 meters. In order to conduct timely research, the company also equipped the submarine with a professional laboratory and several emergency refuge compartments. In case of an unexpected situation, the team members could quickly evacuate to safety. While everyone was engrossed in the submarine's briefing, an elderly man quietly entered the room. This person was James, the CEO of Pickman Corporation. James was a scholar passionate about exploring ancient civilizations, dedicating his entire life to his research. He was filled with longing and curiosity for relics and ancient civilizations. He decided to join the team and delve deep into the ocean for exploration. In the evening, everyone gathered together and chatted. They were excited and eager to explore the unknown, except for Harris, who felt worried. She believed that the ocean was mysterious and dangerous. Peterson noticed her unease and went to comfort her. After a conversation between the two, Harris became less nervous. After 2 months of careful training, everyone had the ability to embark on the exploration of Antarctica. They were sent to the research base in Antarctica, and the submarine underwent its final checks before the descent. Everyone took their positions and waited for further instructions, ensuring the smooth progress of the expedition. To ensure the smooth progress of the expedition, James specifically equipped the submarine with additional oxygen reserves, providing the submarine with a 20-hour endurance. Gordon maneuvered the submarine to descend slowly, heading towards the seabed. According to the previous recorded information, the relic was located in a canyon 11,000 meters below sea level. The submarine was approaching the destination safely. An hour later, they successfully arrived near the relic. The sight that greeted them left everyone in awe. The relic was much more magnificent than they had anticipated. Giant stones were tightly arranged, forming a magnificent gate standing in the underwater world. As they gazed at this spectacle, they couldn't help but feel amazed and astonished, gaining a deeper appreciation for the wisdom and creativity of ancient civilizations. The stones were rooted in the mountain, with surfaces covered in blurry inscriptions. The relic must have existed for a long time. After carefully observing, Harris noticed a perplexing phenomenon. The relic was not submerged underwater, but rather built according to the shape of the mountain. However, this area was once underwater billions of years ago. Could there have been a civilization capable of constructing such wonders in the distant past on Earth? Under the command from the control center, they entered the stone gate of the relic. As soon as they entered the passage, the submarine started to infiltrate large amounts of seawater. The situation became abnormal. The submarine started shaking violently. Gordon sensed something was wrong and wanted to evacuate immediately. Yet, the thrusters malfunctioned. At the same time, the control center lost contact with the submarine. The submarine continued to descend. Just as everyone was panicking, the shaking suddenly ceased, and the submarine returned to normal. At that moment, the team noticed that the submarine was floating above the relic. Before they could react, a call came in from the control center. Harris quickly answered the call, and learned from the staff that they had been disconnected from the outside world for 3 hours. Hearing this, everyone was incredulous. They had only entered the stone gate a short while ago. How could it have been 3 hours? Hank immediately checked the life support system of the submarine, but the result was unexpected. The system had been running for over 4 hours. They had indeed been disconnected for some time, but no one had noticed. Peterson's mind flashed with a thought. Could it be the effect of electromagnetic interference? Just then, Joseph suddenly exclaimed, pointing ahead. Everyone followed his gaze. The scene that unfolded was too eerie, sending shivers down their spines.
Get a better view of it.
Initially, Peterson and Harris thought it was just a statue, but as the camera slowly zoomed in, their suspicions grew stronger. Suddenly, they realized it wasn't a statue but a corpse. The upper half was exposed on the surface, while the lower half remained hidden underground. Several stone pillars stood beside it, giving the impression of sealing the remains. As they looked at the scene before them, everyone was astonished, but James was incredibly excited, as if he had known about this underwater thing beforehand. At that moment, Julia from the control center said to Peterson, "We must obtain biological tissue from the remains at all costs." So, Peterson piloted the landing pod towards the remains. In front of the remains, he truly felt its enormity. One finger of the creature was thicker than an aircraft carrier. It must have been a dominant force in its lifetime. Peterson manipulated the mechanical arm to collect samples. Yet, as the saw touched the remains, the surrounding space trembled. It turned out that the remains were moving. As the creature gradually awakened, everyone finally realized that it was still alive. Harris urged Peterson to retreat, but James insisted on completing the sampling. Originally, Peterson's goal for this expedition was to obtain biological samples from the creature. Peterson had no choice but to continue his operation. Fortunately, the creature's long slumber made its reaction sluggish. He managed to collect the biological samples before the creature fully awakened and safely returned to the submarine. As soon as Peterson returned to the submarine, Harris immediately piloted it to retreat. However, the creature had already fully awakened. It let out a thunderous roar and extended its massive hand in an attempt to grab the submarine. Although the creature failed to capture the submarine, its claws scraped onto it. Hank's compartment suffered severe flooding, and as he tried to escape, James closed the door without any concern. The surging water immediately engulfed Hank. The rest of the team quickly found repair tools. Upon discovering the water leakage, they successfully patched the leak. Meanwhile, Gordon piloted the submarine to evacuate from the opening. Finally, they managed to leave the mysterious relic, but just at that moment, the submarine suddenly lost power. The communication device was damaged in a previous collision. Gordon discovered that the engine was damaged after inspection. Repairing it would take at least 3 hours. At this moment, they faced two options: either wait for the rescue team to arrive on the surface, or fix it themselves. Just as everyone hesitated, the samples that Peterson brought suddenly underwent strange movements, surprising the three of them. At this moment, James also arrived at the control room. He ordered Gordon to repair the engine immediately, while Joseph took the samples to the laboratory for research. While Harris and Peterson opposed studying the samples at this moment, because they were unsure if the biological samples contained ancient viruses. If ancient viruses leaked, the consequences could be severe. Nevertheless, James stubbornly brought the samples into the laboratory and sealed them in a glass jar. When the samples came into contact with oxygen, they instantly extended a slender tentacle, an abnormal sight that alarmed Harris and Joseph. The two immediately shut down the equipment and demanded that James terminate the research. The changes in the biological samples were too astonishing, and nobody knew what consequences would arise from further study. Under the insistence of Harris and Peterson, James gave up on the research. None of the three of them noticed it. Joseph quietly slipped into a room. As they left the laboratory, he activated the communication device and contacted Julia, reporting that the team had completed the sampling mission. Julia immediately issued an order to eliminate everyone except James. Joseph armed himself and prepared to carry out the elimination. On the other side, after a long internal struggle, James secretly sneaked back into the laboratory. He opened the lid of the glass jar, and in an instant, the sample underwent a mutation. rapidly increasing in size. James uncontrollably walked towards the sample. At this moment, Harris also noticed something was wrong, and quickly rushed to the laboratory. Looking through the glass, she witnessed a horrifying scene, as the sample engulfed James. And by now, the sample had grown several times in size. Harris was shocked, and immediately tried to rush in to save him. When she attempted to open the laboratory door, she found it covered in strange, sticky fluid. Harris was filled with fear. She didn't know what to do. She decided to find Peterson to discuss a plan. But when she found Peterson, she witnessed a surprising scene. James had actually walked out, but he had become unlike a human. He emitted low-frequency growls. While both of them were still in shock, James had already leaped towards the entrance. At that moment, Joseph arrived with a gun. He told them that the creature sealed underwater was not something ordinary. It was an extraterrestrial being originating from ancient times, and another extraterrestrial civilization had sealed it. These shocking discoveries were made by Peterson's father's team. While it was puzzling that the team had mysteriously disappeared, later, Pikeman Corporation analyzed that they were likely devoured by the creature. After venturing deep into the cave, the reason James was so obsessed with finding this creature was to obtain its cells. According to legend, these cells could grant immortality, but there was no confirmation of this. After listening to Joseph's explanation, Peterson and Harris realized they had been deceived, but dwelling on these matters was also pointless. The immediate priority is to find an escape plan. Just then, there was an unusual sound coming from the cockpit. Both of them immediately went to investigate. Gordon was lying on the control panel, his body contorting in a strange manner, and the entire panel was covered in sticky fluid. Harris thought of the sticky fluid on the password lock, and a sense of foreboding surged within her. It turned out that Gordon had been to the laboratory before her, and the sticky fluid on the password lock was left by his mutation. Peterson was about to approach for a closer look, but unexpectedly, Gordon suddenly became violent. He pounced on Peterson, swiftly snatching the axe from his hand. Instead of attacking Peterson, Gordon raised the axe and viciously smashed it against the instrument panel. At this critical moment, Joseph arrived swiftly. He raised his weapon, observing Gordon lying on the ground, thinking that it was all over. But to their shock, Gordon's abdomen suddenly split open, and a creature with tentacles emerged from within. The creature instantly lunged at Joseph, and astonishingly burrowed into his body. Peterson and Harris witnessed it all, and immediately realized that these creatures came from the laboratory samples. If they brought them back to the surface, it would undoubtedly unleash an unimaginable catastrophe. Peterson quickly made a decision, instructing Harris to take shelter in the lander, while he returned to the laboratory, with the determination to destroy the samples. He had just reached the entrance of the laboratory. Peterson then discovered that the sample had mutated into a massive chunk of flesh, swelling to many times its original size. Without hesitation, Peterson fetched gasoline and burned this terrifying mass of flesh. Immediately afterward, he quickly returned to the lander, thinking about escaping this dangerous situation with Harris as soon as possible. However, an unexpected event suddenly occurred. As the parasitized Joseph appeared before him, Peterson picked up the handgun from the ground and pulled the trigger, riddling Joseph with bullets. Just as Peterson was prepared to retreat, a strange force entangled him. It turned out to be the monster parasitic inside Joseph's body. In the final moments of being dragged away by the monster, Peterson exerted all his strength and pressed the launch button of the lander. Harris departed from that area alone. When Harris woke up again, she found herself lying in a hospital bed. From Julia's mouth, she learned the astonishing news that the submarine had exploded underwater. Among the entire team, she was the only survivor. Julia was eager to know what they had encountered underwater, but Harris chose to remain silent. Just then, Harris suddenly felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. She touched herself and found her hand covered in fresh blood. It was then that she realized she had also been infected by the creature. Just as Harris was startled, a tentacle burst out from her stomach. The monster's massacre wasn't over, but the movie ended. The film extensively portrayed the mysterious unknown of the relic, and depicted a giant monster sealed by an extraterrestrial civilization. Yet it didn't further explore this aspect, but instead had the monster's cellular parts killed all the characters. It deviated significantly from what the audience hoped to see, and failed to convey the terrifying atmosphere expected from the Cthulhu mythos. It remained confined within the boundaries of a typical monster movie. If you enjoy my channel, please give me a subscription.